Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our Illuminate series. It's spring already in September, and we're going to be talking about Nourish today. So I really appreciate you all making the time to be here, and I look forward to some fairly interesting and frank conversation with you all. Before we get started, I'd love to invite you all to just take a moment to settle into where you are, and we'll do a brief acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to truly acknowledge where I am today, which is Yuin country, and acknowledge the elders that have looked after this beautiful piece of the southeast New South Wales coastline for millennia. All its creatures and all its bush and all its sea and all its sky. And it has been a truly, truly wonderful thing to be living on this Yuin country, and for that I'm very thankful. And I hope that in some way us talking about nourishing today will open up pathways of consideration for people to become healthier and more well and more connected, and in that way prepare themselves or strengthen their capacity to be custodians of the lands that they're on. I'd also like to send my respects out to the elders on the lands that you're all sitting on today, and also acknowledge our collective ancestry, which way back when it was a collective ancestry, and hope that or draw attention to the fact that we're all connected. Thank you. So, how exciting. So you're gathered here today as part of the Illuminate series, and every month through Soul Advisor, we look at a particular topic that we consider to be important to the bigger picture of wellness. Wellness and health and all things around that topic it's a changing, moving feast. And I think only now are we finding a language that really describes what wellness is. And some of that language goes fairly deep. So every month for the Illuminate series, we illuminate a particular topic. And this month we're illuminating Nourish. So I've asked these beautiful panelists to be with us today so that we could have a little chat about how they nourish themselves and how they strengthen who they are in order to do what they do in the world. So it's not a formal conversation, and we would very, very much welcome Maiya and Rose, both of you, to come and speak too also. And have I forgotten anybody? No, Maiya and Rose are the others who are here to chat with us about it as well. But first of all, what I'd love to do is ask our three panelists to introduce themselves, just so that we have the context of who you all are. So Jo Voight, down in Melbourne, I believe, has been on our platform for, I don't know, I'm feeling like it might be a year already. The time seems to be odd on our Soul Advisor platform. And I'd love to talk a little bit about who you are, Jo, or have you talk?
Yes, I'm in Melbourne. I mostly work remotely though, but I do see a few people locally, and yeah, I just offer holistic counselling with a spiritual focus. Not that I'm limited to that, but yeah, big picture, holistic, spiritual themes, but very body-based as well. Is what I do. And I still do work in a whole other industry. So I'm sort of part-time counselling world and part-time accounting world. So I've got a little bit of both there. And I'm also an artist. So I do quite a soul nourishing practices as well. So
that sounds like you're using all three hemispheres of your brain, Jo. Beautiful art and numbers and healing. And you've been in the industry for, or the healing arts, should I call it, which I much prefer, for a long, long time.
Well, yeah, 20-ish years, I suppose. I mean, I've been doing a lot of practices for a lot longer than that, really, since I was a teenager. But I did my training 25 odd years ago, and I've been working in different ways at different times with groups and individuals, and different practices according to what I'm into at the time. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. And it's great to have your quarter of a century of experience with us and the rest.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
And I'd love also to invite Lorraine Arnold to let us know who she is in the context of healing.
Yeah, hi everyone. Similar to Jo, really, I use an integrated approach, psychotherapy and counselling background, and mediumship and energy healing, and I just bring it all together, work very much on a multidimensional level and try and go to the core of what's going on, whether it's this timeline or any other timeline. So get a bit out there, which makes it very interesting and stimulating and fun, and, you know, forever learning in this space. I'm online also, and currently up in the hinterlands. We've just moved from the city in Sydney to a place just above Bellingen, so very beautiful transition, and lots of green and lots of weeding and gardening and nourishing the soul on the land, lots of it. Yeah.
Thank you, Lorraine. That's deeply grounding, being able to spend that time outside. I guess yeah, that's a great way to ground. Jo, you must ground through numbers, endless numbers, if you're an accountant as well.
I've never thought of it as grounding, but that's a great perspective. When it's driving me crazy, I can say, oh, I'm grounding through numbers. No, I would much prefer I love to get in nature. That's my, you know, I will do that whenever I can, but I love your inspiration there.
Thank you very much. So Lorraine, Jo, and we've got Gini Eagle talking to us from another state. Is it the ACT that you live in, Gini?
I live actually in New South Wales, so part-time at near Mickalego, between Cooma and Canberra.
Okay.
We have a biodynamic farm and I guess healing retreat. And then also down at Bermagui on the south coast, which is near Bega, south of Bateman's Bay. So right at this present moment, I'm in Melbourne. Yeah, and this talk today is very, I guess, topical about nurturing, because I've come down, my mother's had a stroke, and so it's been very much on my mind. I think every second person says to me, you know, make sure you look after yourself. And so in terms of answering your question about who am I in relation to healing, I guess I've learnt I'm in a constant sort of process of remembering who I am, which is someone who's connected to everything. And so I've been on this journey, I suppose, to self-discovery for 25 years. And I've learned a lot about who I am not, you know, by my belief systems and, you know, this ego. So yeah, I use all sorts of I guess I use Reiki primarily. I found that it really helped me to wake up to my higher consciousness and my energy. And I also work with horses, so equine therapy, because they're great reflectors of who we are. And they help to keep me grounded. And I also studied social work, psychology, and counselling. And I work in nature a lot with people. So always trying to find different ways to help us to grow and develop and understand our true nature of light. And so I've also studied Drew yoga and Drew meditation, and I bring this into an experience I call whole energy balancing, or WEB. And I've also written a book.
And I also had your book out. So there we go, Matt. Yeah, it's a beautiful book. It really does point to how many different strings you have to your bow in that book, because there's a lot of beautiful tips within that book for awakening.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I feel very happy to be here today with all of you beautiful practitioners, because as you said earlier on, we came from community and connectedness and oneness, and you know, through the ages the separation has happened, and I feel like we now more than ever we need to work together, and it feels really nurturing to be with other like-minded people.
Does it feel nourishing?
Nourishing. And to know that we're all, you know, the little beacons of light out there, and we're all endeavoring to do the best we can to be that change and help people to see how to and feel how to nurture themselves by doing that ourselves. As women, we tend to give a lot out. So yeah.
I think we've got a double whammy, don't we, Gini? Because we're not only women in this group, but we're also health workers and healers and practitioners, and I know also that Maiya and Rose are fall into both those categories, being both women and healers. And so, you know, we can have a conversation about how that is. I guess something that I'm hearing from all three of you there is about the central nature of nature. So feeling that sorry, is this a very bad line at the moment, or are you hearing?
It's okay.
Okay, it keeps going in and out for me. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah,
We'll battle on. Yeah, so you know, I really love that you've just brought it back, Gini, to nature, or what connects us all, and the fact that we're all basically come from one source, which is nature, and we're finding our way back to that. I feel, well, Soul Advisor feels, I guess I'm going to speak on behalf of Soul Advisor, that all these points of lights of us as healers are really about, it's our job is to try and join up those points of light until it becomes really clear to everybody that we're all connected, and that we can come back to a healed space by drawing together and bringing it out. So yes, the biggest form of nourishment, I guess, or one of the biggest forms of nourishment, is community and these kind of conversations. So thank you again to all three of you for joining us. Yeah, so there's so much to talk about. But let's, how about I just open up the field, and please, Rose and Maiya, you're more than welcome to throw your 2 cents in as well in this conversation. When we're talking about nourishment, how would you describe that state of being nourished? Like, what does that actually feel like?
I think, Kate, I think for me, there's different levels, and I think it's a really important practice to remember that in our everyday, nourishment is a whole lot easier to do. And then when we, as you pointed, put it to us at the beginning when you invited us onto this panel, what do we do when we wig out? That's a whole different space. And I think identifying where we're at in our window of tolerance helps to kind of determine the nourishment. You know, there's the everyday nourishment, and then there's the really wig out extreme kind of what do we do in those cases, and make room for those times where we're really out of our window of tolerance, and to change the narrative a bit, like in this collective conversation, in that those are very, very normal times. and making room for them in our realities is really important. So that takes some pressure off, you know, being out of balance, number one, and then it invites a whole lot of compassion in to bring through that extra nourishment. And then the nourishment itself can range from self-regulating through the land, or eating particular food or music, or whatever it is that we do to self-regulate. And then there's the co-regulating, which we're doing right now, connecting with each other, and depending on how far we've wigged out, who we co-regulate with. So I just feel like that was a really important question to ask us when you did email us about, you know, what do we do when we really wig out? Because we all wig out, whether we're therapists or not, whether we're trained in healing or not. There are times where life happens, and that's where we grow and, you know, expand our consciousness, and it's those times where really we really need to dig deep and find the ways that nourish us. So I just wanted to thank you for the question.
Yeah, you brought a few things up there. One is that capacity to see where we are in terms of being nourished, well nourished, and getting to the wig out point, and how we self-monitor. That's probably the first big question that you've put out there. So if we're looking at that whole scale, I guess as we head towards wigging out and that dial starts to get up into the danger zone, we're less able to self-report, we're less able to monitor. So it becomes a bit of a catch-22, doesn't it? It can be like this, a slow kind of losing the nourishment, not sleeping as well, not eating as well, not doing all the things we know, and then suddenly it's like we're over there sitting in bad situation. So that was the first thing. But yes, I'd love to hear from Jo and also Gini how you would define feeling nourished if you had to put words to it.
Feeling nourished to me is, I guess, feeling fuller inside. I guess what I'm trying to say is feeling more peaceful and calm within myself. Feeling connected to the universe and to the earth. And that feeling would be more a state of just comfort, I guess. And you know, just something simple like this you know, jacket that I bought. It's a fluffy jacket, you know, made me feel like that, like a child maybe being held. So I was bringing nurturing back a bit to really connecting with my inner child and finding out what she really needed, you know, particularly now with my mother's not well, you know, what was something that I could do to really self-nurture. And that feeling was comforting myself and my own inner child. So having to be my own parent a little bit. And for that, it's like, yeah, feeling grounded, like lying on the ground and just, you know, curling up in a little child's pose. Or, so it's feeling safe maybe too. And not feeling out of yourself, like stressed out of yourself. So that feeling of yeah, connection, I think is what I'm trying to say. And I sort of talk about it in terms of vibration. So, you know, feeling not too high, not too low, just in a even sort of place of balance. Yeah, so nurturing feels like drinking warm chai and yeah, sitting in a hot bath. And I guess I'm trying to live my life where I feel in connection like all the time and more in touch with that calmer, peaceful state within myself. And so if I'm feeling out of balance in that way, what are the tools I can use to bring myself back to that place of peace and calmness, to the breath, to connecting the roots into the earth, and to bringing the light around myself and listening to my true self, my higher self, not freaking myself out with thoughts. So coming back to the present, if any of that makes sense.
All of it, well, to me anyway, all of that makes sense, and I love the green fluffy jacket approach. I think I'd find one of those myself. That'd be great. But yeah, you've mentioned the warmth, the warmth of tea or the warmth of being in a hot bath or shower, and it is very much that embryonic feeling of being held that you were alluding to through that, and coming back onto the ground and going fetal on the ground. It's and calling that grounding, because that's what we're doing, being in touch with the ground, and what could be more connected really and nourishing than being connected to the ground. And all the research is in the electromagnetic frequencies that we live in can be very ungrounding. So sometimes just being on this object, the computer or the telephone or the TV, day in, day out, as one way of really ungrounding ourselves, and it requires nourishment of another sort to bring us back. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. How about you, Jo? What's your thinking around what being nourished is?
Yeah, I would say similar feelings for me. If I'm generalizing, it's a feeling of fulfillment and calm, deep calm, and being looked after, being cared for, grounded, centered, filled up with something that is really nurturing and loving to myself, and just that deep sense of care. I think there are, we can be nourished on many different levels, and that's it. You can be nourished on one level and undernourished on other levels. But is that, if I'm generalizing, that's the feeling when I think of that word, is that being filled up with something yummy and loving and caring, just similar to Gini, that being held by a carer, whether that is internal or external, I think.
Beautiful. And whether that is internal or external, that's such a big statement, isn't it? Hopefully as we grow up, we manage to nourish ourselves and find pathways through to nourish ourselves. But there's some argument that the kind of lifestyle that we're encouraged to live, or that is the predominant lifestyle, can really not nourish us. I think there's some crazy number of people with sleep disorders in this country. I can't remember the exact figure. Maybe someone else here can. If you're not sleeping, it's very, very hard to feel nourished, isn't it? Because the other aspect of nourishment is, no matter how much good stuff happens to you, if you're not absorbing that, or detecting that that's feeding you, or detecting that that's supporting you, then it's hard to feel nourished, isn't it? So we have a lot of stimulation in this world, and a lot of great things happen to a lot of us, but sometimes it's just way too busy to actually have the time to digest those and feel like we've absorbed them, and then actually feel nourished, like we've grown from them. In fact, it can just feel like an endless to-do list. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's I was thinking about the word nourish or nurture. In the dictionary, it means like care, protect someone while they're growing and developing, or encourage the development of. And yeah, it's interesting that the word says someone, so I think we've sort of been trained a bit to help others first, which, we are here to serve. But, and it's almost like maybe we were born into thinking that we had to help others and then get you know, a bit stressed out of ourselves to understand that the real place of nourishment comes from ourselves first. And maybe we didn't have, some of us mightn't have had great role models about how to nourish ourselves and give ourselves unconditional love. We don't really know what that is sometimes. So yeah, I think it comes back to maybe tapping into that inner child again. I keep coming back to that, like, who am I? And thinking, who am I? What am I here for? And encouraging ourselves to look at what really brings us to a higher consciousness, to more joy, to what brings us delight, let's say. So by asking those deeper questions and then starting to follow those paths and the universal language that leads us through synchronicity to following that bliss, but we really need to tune into what that is for each of us, rather than, you know, I spent so much time comparing myself to other people and, you know, thinking that that's who I was. But once I started to listen and tune in again to my inner child that, you know, just wanted to be free and play and not even live in a house. And, you know, some of my past lives, these are all sort of indicators as to what it is that really nourishes us, you know, not what we think might nourish us. You know, for me, I was like, oh, what does that mean, self-love? Or does it mean going and having your hair done? Or, you know, that's sort of the role modeling I'd seen a lot. But then I was like, no, for me, it's more about getting on my horse and, you know, galloping, you know, which is part of my past life self as an Indian or whatever. So it's very interesting to think maybe deeper about what brings us, you know, what our inner child and what brings us closer to what nourishes us.
So beautifully expressed. Thank you very much. And it brings me to ask Lorraine, who I know is working in a very multidimensional way to help people come back to their own selves and also works for herself in that way. So yeah, I've been lucky enough to be the recipient of Lorraine's wisdom and deep connection to the multi-dimensions. And I'd love to ask Lorraine, how do you feel about nourishing ourselves at those deeper connected levels that bring us to the light, as Gini was saying?
Yeah, again, just similar to Gini and to Jo, checking on what we're experiencing in our resonance and being honest with ourselves, not being sucked up into the collective narrative of what it shouldn't look like, our resonance and what our practices shouldn't bring to us. So falling into practices just because if they don't ring true to changing our resonance is not nourishment. That's just that's kind of not true if it's not true to you. So checking in our resonance on an energetic level and working within, you know, polarity. This exists. So at this moment in time, I'm experiencing terror and fear. Then the polarity exists in that moment as well. So again, coming back to choice and awareness around the field that we're in. And where we want to resonate. So for me, that's a form of nourishment, kind of practicing where we're resonating at and shifting that resonance as a practice. It's always a practice. We're sometimes going to get it right, sometimes wrong, sometimes somewhere in between. But where are we resonating? What's going on for us at a physical level? Might need to sleep or have a shower or have 3 showers a day, because that's what might bring me back to my center. Or have a bath and put the Epsom salts in, or lie on the ground. At a mental level, I might just need to watch a children's movie tonight and just completely switch off. at a emotional level, the terror example, or inner child again, what do I need? What's being triggered for me? What's this vulnerability about? You know, what's this bringing up in me? I don't feel supported. I don't feel I have any support around me at the moment. I feel let down by this person or that person. But checking in on the story, letting go of the story, and then going to the energy. So the energy is, I feel like I need support, or my inner child needs support. So doing the self-parenting, self-talk for my inner child, and also going out into the universe and drawing up and in the cosmic infinite support. So, you know, working with the Ascended Masters, Kuan Yin, bringing through cosmic infinite love, working with the Violet Flame with Saint Germain, if you're open to working with the higher beings, bringing that violet flame to transmute, and that's a form of nurturing, transmute any energies that you're struggling with, which is normal. So that's going back to, you know, life can be hard, life can be, you know, challenge. It is, and testing and all of that. So rather than being such a controlled way that we we're not, you know, the practices mean that we're never going to be challenged. Just kind of coming to an acceptance of life can and is challenging, and that's part of the growth. And how do we then kind of nurture ourselves through that, through the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual levels. So, working with the challenges and really identifying what's going on honestly. What am I experiencing? What am I feeling in the moment? And how do I get that need met spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically? And for everybody, it's different. Everybody will ground themselves in a different way. And what was useful and effective last year changes, because we're constantly evolving and changing, just like an infant always, you know, they're changing from week to week, and what will soothe them. We're just always evolving as well. So our practices are continually deepening or changing, or, you know, we draw on different areas. So, yeah.
Yeah, so beautiful. It's true. We are constantly evolving, and hopefully that's why people are joining or listening into this particular chat, because we can always learn something and mull it around. Yeah. I love that you're talking about the physical, the mental, the physical, mental. What else is there? Spiritual and emotional. Yeah.
And just as Gini said, connecting in with our higher selves, and we are, you know, aspects of all of these higher divine being. I mean, we're all, as you said at the beginning, from one. So here we are down here on the planet Earth in the third dimension.
And it's a bumpy ride. Yeah.
All of us. Yeah.
That's true. And it's a bumpy ride, as you pointed out, Lorraine, you know, like, and when you're all talking and talking about that rounded, nourished, full, complete feeling, I have that mental image of, you know, we cross terrain in our lives, don't we? We cross smooth plains, and then we climb mountains, and then we fall down the other side, and then we go across rivers, and all of those, the emotional terrain. And
it's all normal, and it's all part of, you know, as we know.
This is our place of learning. But if we're feeling that nourishment, then it's a smoother ride, because there's less, we're held within that bubble that can move across that terrain, as opposed to being naked and bare and exposed and perhaps more in danger.
Yeah, I think, you know, just drawing on my experience right now, because with my mother, because probably the highest trauma I've probably had in a while, just drawing on those techniques or tools. I think for all of us, it's great to really know what they are, you know, on a daily basis, so we can get back to where, well, firstly know what that feeling is of nourishment, and then thinking about the tools that we can use to guide our way back when we're emotionally out of control, is really important. So yeah, I mean, the simple one I've used is just connecting roots into the earth and breathing in and out of the earth, of Mother Earth, and then breathing in through the soul star chakra. And so we call it heaven and earth breath. So breathing in through the roots up into the heart, and breathing out to the star above, and breathing in, and then breathing out into the roots. And I find that like incredibly centering and calming, and bringing myself back away from, because it's really controlling our mind, or not controlling it, but trying to master our thoughts, that creates the stress. We are, stinking thinking, like we are our own worst enemies with our thoughts. And so that helps me to always come back, no matter where I am or what I'm doing. It's probably my number one go-to. And knowing that, it is about our energy and how we keep it in a calm state by, cleansing it and clearing it constantly on a daily basis.
And that, that technique, although it's huge in its effect, it's so simple, isn't it?
It's so simple, and you can do it just now, and then you build, a neural pathway to the roots are there. And I know when my son used to say to me, "Mum, just chill out, stop crying about what somebody said to you," like when I was very emotionally vulnerable or weakened, I suppose. My aura, my energy field, my chakras were weak. And all these exercises that I've actually put in my book, everything that I've tried and true, have really stood me in good stead right now with what's happening with Mum. And so I'm not saying I'm perfect in any way, just saying that, if we keep doing one little thing every day, even if it's just one little, like, my breath, count in for 4, hold, breathe out for 4, holding a rock, being grateful, there's just little tiny things that bring us back to the present, like Eckhart Tolle said once, you could, someone came to him and said, "I'm going to a well-being seminar, which seminar should I go to? There's this, that, and the other." And he's like, "Well, you could save yourself a lot of money and just come back to your breath now." So, it is simple, but when we're frazzled and when we have a shock, it's hard to think of what to do, but and we need, like, often I don't feel like doing yoga because I'm not feeling in my best vibration, but that's exactly what you need to be doing. So, if it's something like just shaking your hands, and then you're like, "Oh, okay, well, I can pick my energy up a bit here." And I have picked up on a lot of energy from going to the hospital to see Mum. So I have to just brush it off, flick it off, go in the steam room, jump in the water. So it's, and I can just breathe. And when I go in there, I can surround myself with light. So, I find that it has paid off, this focus on mind, body, spirit.
Practice, 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 as you say. And Jo, how about you when you get to that point? What do you draw on in your life?
I've got a lot of things I do. I guess meditation and yoga, nature time, lots of different forms of exercise. 5 rhythms is one of my favorites. Thinking about highlights and gratitude, like I think a lot of us do gratitude practice and that's great, but highlights is something very concrete. And sometimes that's a way of reminding yourself, like when you're feeling depleted or undernourished, what's the highlight? What is something concrete that I can remember that actually was really nourishing in this context, to remember that even if you've undernourished on some levels, you might well be being nourished on other levels, and to really, you know, acknowledge that and make more of that. My art is part of my soul nourishment. I love a good silent retreat. Just get me on a silent retreat. That for me feels very nourishing. And then, you know, various spiritual teachers that I might listen to if I need a bit of a dose of spiritual nourishment. And then, of course, there's food. I mean, I love good food, and you know, there's sometimes food is the nourishment you need. Yeah, so, you know, I think part of the art of looking after yourself well is to know what tools you need when, you know, what is the nourishment you need. You know, do I actually need to watch something dreadful and drink a glass of wine? Is that actually the most nourishing thing I could do? You know, or yeah, do I need to spend a day in silence and spiritual practice? You know, and it could be anything in between. But I think that's part of the art is like, it's actually a nourishing thing to even learn the language of, well, what do I need right now? What are the options available to me? And what, you know, where am I nourished, and where am I needing care and nourishment? That was something I really had to learn in depth a few years ago. I had a car accident and I ended up with post-concussion syndrome, which nobody knew about at the time. And it was a very, very difficult thing to navigate, because I had to do less. And I couldn't drive, and I was desperate for nature. And I couldn't nourish myself in the ways I was used to. I couldn't dance, I couldn't exercise, I couldn't paint, I couldn't do anything. And but what I could do was put photos of my favorite national parks, you know, on my computer and listen to nature noises. And so that's how I got that, you know, and I could kind of go, okay, I can't nourish myself on all these other levels the way I would like to, but what can I do? Okay, what's, you know, and so sometimes I feel like that's a way in too, is, well, what if I could do anything at all, what would that be? Just, you know, and then bring it back. Okay, well, what can I do that's the closest step towards that feeling? What is that feeling that I want? And what's the closest step that I can give myself now that will get me close to that? So in that example, you know, I could feel at least some sense that, oh, nature is still out there, even though I couldn't get there, you know. Yeah.
Wow, that's actually a beautiful framing, isn't it? To let your mind roam wild and free and think, if I could have anything right now to nourish me, what would that be? And then to find a way to do some of that, bring in the essence. What a nice technique. I hope other people besides me will take that away with them.
That sort of thing that we might label as a bad choice, you know, sometimes that might be the best choice in the moment, but it's about, is that our default? Does it become a habit? Is it a way of deflecting, or, you know, suppressing, or whatever, you know, whatever else is going on? So, you know, if you can honestly say, no, this is just what I need to do now, and that's totally okay. But, you know, yeah, if I'm reaching for the wine and the bad movie, you know, for 3 weeks in a row, okay, maybe I need to see somebody and, you know, get nourishment in some other way, because that's really not nourishing then. So then when it becomes a bad habit, you know, then it's no longer nourishment. So again, it comes back to discerning, you know, what do you need in the moment, and being fluid and flexible with that, as Lorraine was talking about earlier, with all the different levels, you know, that we need to that we do exist on, and that we need to look after, you know.
Absolutely. I feel, that whole thing of reaching for the glass of wine once now and again can be very therapeutic, but, they've crunched the numbers on addiction too, haven't they? Addiction commonly is to something that's not very good for you, whatever that may be, or whatever behavior that may be. And that really, the essence of that is looking for connection, which, coming back to the nourishing theme again, is that fetal thing of being warm, contained, held, and plugged into a source of nutrient nourishment. So, we go looking for it in the strangest places, and some of that can be a bit misguided at times. Yeah.
I wrote that down, exactly what you're just describing, like nurturing versus indulgence, and what, how when we're out of balance and tired and stressed and our vibrations low, we tend to reach for that like-minded energy, like energy attracts. So we tend to reach for those sugars and things like that. And as you say, I guess it is about listening to our soul and what's helped us in the past, and that brings us up rather than sort of takes us down. But sometimes having some sugar and a glass of wine is absolutely fine, because we're reasonably balanced in other ways or whatever. So I was thinking about that concept, and for me, like, I was watching Mary, Queen of Scots, the whole time, but I was freaking out about my mother. And that to prove, because everything's reflecting our consciousness, what we're watching, what we're eating, reflecting our energy and where we're at. And she was a really brave, strong woman. And I was like, okay, well, that might be binging a bit. But in fact, she was giving me impetus to stand up to the doctors and the nurses when I had to go in the hospital.
Such a great series, that one. I binged on that earlier this year. Highly recommend.
So, when I was freaking out, having not, my mind was just reeling. I was living in my mother's house, and it's like, is this a nightmare? I'm just going to wake up tomorrow and she'll be here, and I'd turn off Mary, Queen of Scots, and then my mind would start again, so I just have to turn it back on. So it's like, till like 1 o'clock in the morning. So
it's a colourful life we all lead, isn't it? Really. Nothing boring about this. So I think it's really important also, as part of this conversation, I think someone touched on it a little earlier, that as therapists, we're people, and so all of us as therapists and practitioners have probably had that same experience that I've had anyway, of being put on a pedestal. I remember going to an art gallery opening and watching my two clients do this with their glass of wine as they come in the door. That happens in a metaphorical sense a lot, doesn't it? Where people are presume that because you're paid to do what we all do, that you know how to deal no matter what. And of course, we're just learning on the job, all of us. Yes.
Yeah. I think there's a real myth out there that you have a problem and you get it fixed, and then you're fine, and then it just and so but life is this constant cycling and evolving, and if we're not working on our own stuff, and if we're not still evolving ourselves, then how can we possibly help other people? And I've had that conversation many times, where someone is like, oh, well, but you've got it all so together. You're so, I actually still see a therapist. I have my own therapists, and I have my own tools, and I have my own shadows that I still work with, and that is being human. That is part of it. And so I actually love it when that comes up, because I can really straight away challenge that, like, no, take me off that pedestal. I'm helping you now, but someone else is going to help me. And it just how it is, and that's how it, you know, we need to keep working on ourselves to not only to look after ourselves, but, you know, to be of good service to our people.
This is why I think this kind of conversation is so important to help change that narrative.
Yeah.
We're all human and we're having a very human experience here, no matter what our role is. We're all growing and evolving.
That's right.
The other aspect of nurturing, I just was thinking just then, is our divine masculine and feminine when it's out of whack. And what I personally do, if I lay in a dark room, if I need to balance and nurture my divine feminine, and then with my divine masculine personally, I will just, to settle my divine masculine down if I'm over functioning, is to take it right back and just do a small job. So if I've got an endless big jobs, I'll come back and just do a small job, whether it's weeding a patch of the garden or doing a pile of dishes or whatever it is, vacuuming the house. It's just bringing that back in and giving that some space and time out, simplifying the action-oriented part of myself. I'm feeling good about it. So just another tool there.
That's a beautiful statement. You know, we're so often caught in the old Dalai Lama. I love the way the Dalai Lama explains it as human. We are human beings, not human doings. And when we're being, when we're present, when we're boomf, we're going to feel nourished, because it's very hard not to, isn't it? We're feeling, you know, the sky is nourishing us. The beauty happens right here, right now. It's when we get that frantic feeling about the future and all that has to happen, and we have that painful period of the past and how it may have been. That's when the trouble starts. But that nurtured sense of being present is just so important. That nourished sense of belonging to the moment, really. Now, I'm very aware it's 1:27, and I'm just wondering whether Maiya or Rose, you'd like to pipe in, or whether you're happy listening there.
I've been very happy listening. When we started, I thought, what's the difference between nurturing and nourishing? And for me, what I got was nurturing comes from outside and nourishing is internal. I know that's interesting. It's just the sensation I got when I thought about it. And I will sit with that and work out the difference for me. And the other thing that I was going to say is I teach theta healing, and I always say to my students, I know more about theta healing than you, but I don't know everything. Like, you know, I'm not on a pedestal. I might have lived longer than you, but I don't know everything. I just know more about theta healing than you do. And I think that when you do that, it makes you more relatable, rather than, you know, being put on a pedestal, you know. And I think that that's maybe what used to happen with teachers. You know, I know everything.
Yeah.
I'm wonderful and whatever. Then you're all below me. Yeah.
It's an old
Yeah, no, I feel the same. I keep saying I'm just sharing what I know. I'm no better, or, you know, so that's important. And we learn so much from our students, don't we? So much. But I found for me lately, nurturing, I was starting to feel a bit burnt out with teaching lots of classes through the week. For me now, I'm going to a class once a week. Should have thought of that before. It's so good. Just lie there and be instructed. Oh, so nice. So I'm really getting a lot out of that. And yeah, just because I miss my ashram. We used to have an ashram that I could go to every school holidays, and it's not there anymore. So yeah, I have to find other ways. So it's about adapting to what you've got to deal with, and and staying nurtured. Yeah, really important. So it's been great listening to everyone here. Thank you. I've got some nice notes here on loving that breath, especially of using that. I'm going to use that one. Breathing in from the earth through the heart and out through the head. That sounds lovely.
And then breathing back.
And breathing back in. Yeah, I like it. Thank you. But all of it was really nice. So thank you. Just a reminder to, take care of ourselves. because as you know, we're all caring for other people all the time. And actually, I've got to go and care for, I've got a 2 o'clock class with an 85-year-old who's quite eccentric, and I go to her house and she tells me what she wants me to do for the class. So it's like, today it's singing bowls. So
Wonderful.
bowls over.
Someone who knows what nourishes her. That's great.
She does.
Yeah.
She's very good. I'm learning a lot from her, actually. So, yeah.
Well, I think, it's beautiful to be in this very nourishing conversation with all of you. And I hope that this extends nourishment out into our community and starts people thinking. And I totally agree. And, as a parting thought, I'd really love everybody that listens into this, therapist or not, to think about that context of being in a cycle of nourishment, because everything that it goes round, the cycle of the breath or the air, or the water or the nutrient keeps going around. And so, as therapists, as practitioners, it's so important to be within that lineage, isn't it? So that we receive, so we can give, so that person can give, and
exactly
we go. And I guess it's a point of trust. That's probably a very good question to ask of your therapist or practitioner, whether they're actually receiving the nourishment or how they're where they are in the lineage. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Really, thank you, Lorraine, for piping in and from way up there in the bush. Really beautiful to have your words of wisdom, and yours, Jo. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to have had you on the panel after you've many times been with us as a practitioner. And thank you, Gini, also. I'm going to go because I have to get this call, but many thanks.